Well, hello there and welcome back to our YouTube channel. I'm delighted that you're here today. Today we're going to be talking about suction issues and troubleshooting for the Medela Symphony. So first things first, if you don't have power or you don't have any signs of life in your pump, then you can check out the rear of the pump. And it might look a little something like this, which looks like it might be okay, but in actual fact, this is the guy that needs to be plugged in, because without this, you're not actually going to have any power. It's very often hidden under this little one here, and you just pop the power supply in here. And once it's in, you can leave it in. The reason that it's out is because it will not store in the storage case that it comes in if the power supply is in the back of the pump. So that's why you're going to find it not connected when you take it out of the pump or out of the case. So once that's in, you're good to go. The power supply is in. This piece here is just to hold it in place so it doesn't get lost or disconnected entirely. So once it's in place, unless you're putting it back in the case, you won't need to unplug that section there. So turning it around, this is the pump. Here we have the on button, the suction control, and the let down button. So in terms of suction, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put your whole entire kit together, which means that you have to dismantle it to wash it or dismantle it to inspect it if you're finding that suction has decreased over the period of time that you've been using it. So I'm going to put the pump to the side just ever so slightly, and I'm going to show you the pieces as we put them together. So here we have the valve and the white membrane, and so we want to inspect that to make sure that there's no tears, puckers, damage to it, because as much as he might look quite inconspicuous, he's very important, and it is important that there is no damage. And so when we put it together, just want to make sure that that snaps in. You're not going to hear it because it is soft silicone, but once that is in place, then it goes on the underside of the breast shield, and so that should sit level and flat. If this is not lying level or flat, it does mean that it needs to be replaced, and these parts can be bought individually, so you don't have to go to great expense to replace these parts. These are going to be replaced depending on the frequency of use and how often they're being removed for washing, and so general wear and tear is going to wear down the silicone in particular. And then any size bottle that you have that you're placing on the underside. And then we have the flex shields, which go on the top. So that is how we put the actual bottle and breast shields together. And so then we're going to move on to the tubing. So when the tubing comes in the kit initially, it is all going to be put together for you, so you don't have to put it together. But if you detect any suction issues, or if one of the kids gets into it or something happens with it and it does come out, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to check the end of the tubings to make sure that they are all intact and there's no damage, there's no cracks, there's no breaks, and the same with this side. So the other thing we're going to look at on the cap end is to make sure that these are pushed in together so that there is no loss of suction coming through the end where the tubing meets the cap. We want to make sure that those are well connected. So once we've inspected these, then we're going to replace the silicone caps on the inside. The reason that I've removed them is because if you do notice or detect a loss of suction, it is advisable to remove the caps to inspect them. This is where they are suctioning up and down as the pump is moving, and so they can draw in some dust, they can draw in dog hair, cat hair, etc. And even the tiniest amount of that debris inside in the caps can cause problems with your suction. So remove the caps, inspect them for damage or debris, and if they are, get a lint-free cloth such as a microfiber cloth, wipe them out. If you feel like you need to wash them, you can wash them. Just make sure that they are dried completely and dried with a microfiber cloth at the end before you reinsert them. To reinsert them, you just place the cap inside on the silicone and they fit very snugly on there. You want to inspect it when you put it back in for any tears, any damage, because if there If there is any damage to it, again, that is going to be the reason for your loss of suction. So I'll just put the other cap on in here. And again, looking for any signs of wear or tear, any signs of stretching, any puckering could be the reason as to why these would need to be replaced. So if your tubing is intact, you can then go ahead and put the pump together. So to open the pump, press the button on the front, lift the handle, and then both caps connect in here. And then we push down until we get a click. So a very gentle click on both sides. Again, check that the tubing is inserted. Both of the caps are on. If you haven't gone to the trouble of disconnecting the caps and you've inspected the tubing, it could just be that these caps have come loose. So you can check to make sure that they're in place, and then we close it down. Don't worry that the underside of the tubing does not lay flat on the pump. There is a space underneath right here, and that is not to be concerned about. That is just how it is. Once the pump is put together, then we can put the pump together with the tubing on to the back of the bottle. So the tubing goes in the back here. And so that is it put back together. If you've had to dismantle it to inspect it, you should at this point find now that the suction has improved and there are no further issues with your suction. However, if you're still having suction issues at this point, there may be a problem with the actual pump and it may need to be replaced. When it comes to condensation or getting milk in your tubing, that is an entirely different scenario. So if you find that there's condensation in the tubing, the first thing that you can do is just put the pump to the side, turn it on, turn up the suction and let it run. That may dry out the condensation for you. If by mistake you get milk into the tubing, then you can remove the tubing, take it out, rinse through the soapy water to remove the milky residue, and then you can hang the tubing to dry. If you hang the tubing, and hopefully in a nice warm area, that should help most of the moisture to leave the tubing. However, you might find that there still is a little bit of residue of condensation left, and then you can turn on the pump and let the pump run, and that will pull air through the tubing and that will dry out the condensation for you. If condensation is not being removed through trial and error with turning the pump on and off and letting the pump run for a little while, then you may need to replace the tubing, because unfortunately if condensation is left within the tubing, it can lead to mold, which can obviously become a concern. So removing the tubing, getting it cleaned out and getting the condensation out is key to making sure that there is nothing going on within the tubing. And if you need to replace the tubing, then you can do that. One tip that I can give you is that after you've rinsed the tubing through and you now have quite some water in there, then you can become a little cowboy and you can lasso the tubing. So I would recommend going outdoors and taking the tubing and lassoing it to force the water out, and that will help to speed up the drying process for you. And then you can hang the tubing and then let the water drip out, let the condensation come out, and then you can turn on the pump and have it dry it out in that way for you. In terms of replacing your kit, if you've tried the troubleshooting hints and tips that we've suggested here today and they're not improving the suction for you, then you can replace your kit. Your kit probably will need to be replaced about every 3 months or so, depending on how frequent a pumper you are and how often you're using the pump. So if you are an exclusive pumper, you're probably looking at about every 3 months or so, but every time you dismantle the pump to put the parts into the wash, then inspect to make sure that everything is working just fine. Like I've said, the valves and membranes can be bought independently because they may need to be replaced more frequently than that. And this little guy, because he is so little and so fragile, he can get torn or he can get damaged and puckered, and so he might need replaced. But the other thing is that they can just get washed down the sink sometimes too. So when they are purchased in a pack, there's quite a number of them in there. So it's pretty common for them to get worn and torn pretty easily. So I hope that you found this to be a good option for you in terms of troubleshooting. We would love to know if this has been helpful for you. If you found it helpful, do give us a thumbs up, and we would love to hear your thoughts on how this has been helpful for you. We're back every Thursday at 11 a.m. with a new video, and I hope that you found this helpful and that you'll be back with us next Thursday. So until then, it's bye from me and it's bye from everybody at the New Mummy Company, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.